They threw their ugly alien daughter at the rancher as a cruel joke, but she changed everything later. The verdict was delivered beneath a dome of light that shimmered with the illusion of purity. The grand chamber of the High Assembly was a cathedral of glass and steel, its walls alive with shifting constellations projected from the planetary core. Every word spoken here was etched into history, or so the counselors claimed. But truth rarely survived in these halls. At the center of that chamber stood Avalra, daughter of High Assembly Elder Moitress of the Valar Dominion. Her silver-toned skin glowed faintly in the light, her tall frame upright, though her hands were bound with radiant cuffs that burned against her wrists. Her eyes, dark violet pools that reflected both defiance and sorrow, did not lower when the judgment was read. For the crime of dissent, for sowing discord within the Dominion, and for placing personal conviction above the unity of our people, you are hereby stripped of rank, heritage, and all rights of succession, the elder's voice echoed, sanctified by ritual, but hollow with politics. Avelra's gaze slid to him, her own father, robed in authority, expression carved from stone. She remembered the night she had uncovered the ledgers, the secret records of trade with warlords who trafficked in enslaved species and bioweapons. She had spoken out in open tribunal. She had named names, and the chamber had gone silent. And soon, the truth a weapon turned against her. Her punishment was not death. That would have been too merciful. You are hereby exiled beyond Dominion space. A union contract has been arranged with a human soldier. Your life will serve where your defiance cannot. He may accept you or cast you aside. Either way, you will trouble this council no longer. The words struck like plasma fire. A ripple of murmurs traveled the assembly tiers, layered with cruel laughter disguised as decorum. Humans, primitive, volatile, barely tolerated by the Dominion. To send her to one was mockery dressed as law. Avalra straightened, her heart thudded with a slow, measured rhythm. So this was the trap. If she were cast out by the human, shame would cling to her name for eternity. If she were killed, the council's problem would vanish into silence. Her lips parted, her voice, low and steady, carried across the dome. Truth is not treason, and when this dominion falls under the weight of its own corruption, remember who warned you. Gasps rippled. Her father's jaw tightened, but he gave no reply. With a gesture, he dismissed her. Guards pulled her toward the waiting transport, their armored boots clanging against the luminous floor. As the chamber doors sealed behind her, Avalra exhaled once, letting the weight of betrayal sink deep. The homeworld skies might never be hers again. Her people had named her exile, disgrace, burden. But something within her, something that would not bend, remained unbroken. 200 light years away, on the edge of human colonized space, a different man read his orders. Commander Ryan Torvak sat at a scarred steel table inside a frontier outpost. The room smelled of machine oil and dust storms that crept through cracks in the walls. He had fought in 3 wars, survived 2 planetary sieges, and carried scars like constellations across his skin. His hair was dark, peppered with the gray of years spent in battlefields. His eyes, steel blue, hard but weary, studied the datapad in silence. The message bore the insignia of the Valar Dominion, transmitted through a dozen bureaucratic channels until it reached him. We are pleased to confirm your request for union. The Assembly has selected for you Avalra, daughter of Elder Matris. She departs at once, Ryan frowned. He hadn't requested anything. A union? The words stank of manipulation. He had asked for supplies, reinforcements, maybe even leave. Not a bride, certainly not an alien one. He read the letter again, then set the pad down with slow precision. His hands, which had gripped rifles and blades across half a galaxy, trembled with something new. Confusion, unease. Avalra. The name meant nothing to him, but the Dominion's eagerness did. Deals like this never favored the human. Somewhere behind the honeyed words lurked knives. Outside his window, the barren plains of Kestris 3 stretched endless, dust storms swirling across a sky the color of rust. This colony was fragile, an outpost on the brink, its defenses aging, its settlers weary. He had stayed because leaving would mean watching it collapse. Now they were sending him a woman. Or a weapon. Perhaps both. Ryan rose, his boots grinding against the floor. He adjusted the sidearm at his hip and looked toward the horizon. A dust cloud marked the descent of a transport. Whatever game the Dominion played, it was landing here, and he would be ready. The ship's landing struts hissed as they met soil, hydraulic limbs sinking into red dirt. From its ramp descended two armored escorts, faceless behind mirrored helms, dragging a single figure between them. Avelra's feet touched Kestrus for the first time. She wore no crown of her heritage now, only a plain gray tunic that hid the strength beneath. Her wrist bore faint burns where the radiant cuffs had been removed. She carried a single case, light enough to suggest she had brought nothing of her old life with her. The escorts offered no farewells. One shoved her forward, the other tossed her case at Ryan's feet. Then, with the indifference of men discarding refuse, they returned to the ramp. The transport lifted, roaring into the sky until it vanished into the dust clouds. Silence settled, broken only by the hiss of wind across the plains. Ryan regarded her. She was taller than he expected, her bearing regal even in exile. Her skin shimmered faintly as if reflecting unseen stars. Her eyes, strange, violet dark, met his without flinching. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. His voice was rough, shaped by years of command and loss. "I know," Avelra replied. Her tone was steady, not pleading, not ashamed. "My family sent you the wrong daughter." A bitter smile touched Rian's lips. "And what am I supposed to do with the right one?" "That depends," she said. She lowered her voice, leaning slightly closer as though the wind itself might carry her words back to the Dominion. "On whether you want to live." His brows furrowed. "Explain." Her gaze sharpened, twin shards of midnight flame. "They exiled me as punishment. But that was only half their plan. The other half was this. They want you dead. My arrival was never meant as a gift. It was bait. They sent assassins. They are watching as wind rose, carrying the scent of iron and ozone." For a long moment, the human and the alien stared at each other, both weighed down by truths too sharp to ignore. Rian's instincts, the ones that had kept him alive through a dozen battles, tightened like a coiled spring. He studied her face, searching for deceit. All he found was exhaustion, and beneath it, a spark of defiance that mirrored his own. "What I plan to do," Ryan said at last, "is offer you food and shelter. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." Something flickered in Avelra's eyes, surprise, perhaps even hope. She had expected rejection, maybe violence. Instead, she was given a chance. Thin as paper, fragile as the silence between storms. But real. She inclined her head, the gesture dignified. "Then I will tell you everything I know." Ryan picked up her case, lighter than it should have been. As he turned toward the outpost, the alien exile followed. Her steps were silent, her presence strange against the dust and steel of a human frontier. Overhead, the twin suns sank low, painting the sky in bruised shades of crimson and gold. Neither of them spoke, but both felt the same truth settle heavy on their shoulders. This was not a union. It was the beginning of a war neither had chosen. Yet together they might survive it. And perhaps, if survival gave them time, something more. The frontier outpost was little more than a collection of reinforced structures carved out of dust and grit. Wind rattled the steel plates as if trying to pry them loose. Lights flickered in the corridor as Ryan guided Avelra through, her silent presence filling the narrow space with an unfamiliar gravity. He stopped at a doorway and triggered the panel. The room was Spartan. A cot, a table, a storage trunk, and a view of endless barren plains. He set her case down and gestured. "Not much, but it's yours if you want it." Avelra stepped inside, eyes scanning every detail with the precision of someone trained to catalog threats. She touched the wall, her silver-toned fingers tracing a seam in the steel. "This outpost wasn't built by the Dominion." "No," Ryan said. "Humans build for survival, not ceremony." Her lips curved faintly. It wasn't a smile, but something close. Practical. He studied her for a moment. There was a stillness about her, like a blade resting in its sheath. Beautiful, perhaps, but in the way lightning was beautiful, a force better respected than admired. "I'll get you food," he said, turning toward the mess hall. The hall smelled of recycled air and ration packs. Rian heated 2 portions of protein stew, sliding one across the table to her. She regarded it with faint distaste before lifting the spoon. "This isn't food," she said after the first bite. He smirked. "It's what keeps us alive. That's good enough." She swallowed, then tilted her head. "Your people endure on willpower alone. Some would call that our greatest weakness. Or your greatest strength." They ate in silence for a while, though her eyes kept drifting to the reinforced windows. The way she sat, alert, spine straight, hands ready, reminded him of soldiers on watch. Finally, she set the spoon down. "You should know why I'm here." "I figured you'd tell me," Rian said, voice flat. Her gaze hardened. "The assembly is rotting from within. They trade with warlords who prey on the weak. They silence anyone who questions them. I've found proof." I spoke it aloud. "That was my crime," Rian leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "And so they threw you to a human soldier." Convenient way to bury the evidence. "Yes, and to punish you." Her voice dropped, lower, sharper. "They think of your kind as reckless, unworthy of trust. They imagine you'll either cast me aside or die defending me." Rian's jaw tightened. He'd seen enough of alien arrogance to believe it. But there was something different about her. Something raw, unpolished. She wasn't trying to impress him, only to survive truthfully. He met her gaze. "If what you say is true, then they'll come for me soon." Her silence was answer enough. The first sign came that night. Rian woke to the alarmed bray of the corvins, 4-legged herd beasts kept in the corral outside. Grabbing his sidearm, he stepped into the night, dust whipping across his face. There, in the pale glow of security lights, he saw Avalra already moving. She was crouched beside a corvon, her hands deep in its side as it writhed in pain. Blood steamed in the cold air. "What the hell?" "Poison," she said quickly, not looking up. Her hands moved with precise efficiency, extracting a black shard of something metallic from the beast's flesh. "Bladed implant." The wound would have festered and killed it by morning. Ryan's stomach tightened. He raised his weapon, scanning the perimeter. The fence line flickered. Several panels had been cut clean through. "Sabotage," he muttered. "Yes," Avalra replied. Sweat glistened on her silver skin as she sealed the wound with a portable med-gel unit from her case. Her movements were practiced, almost ritual. "They're testing your defenses, watching your response." He crouched beside his voice, watching the beast's ragged breathing ease. "You've done this before." "On the frontier of my people's colonies, there were no healers when warbands attacked. I learned because no one else would." Their eyes met, his hardened from battles, hers sharpened by exile. For the first time, he saw her not as a burden, but as an ally forged in the same fire. The next days passed in wary rhythm. Avalra moved through the outpost with quiet purpose. She studied the defense grids, repaired a water recycler beaten with tools Ryan had long abandoned, and calibrated weapons with an alien precision he couldn't match. The settlers, few, scattered, suspicious, watched her with caution, whispering behind her back. But when she saved a child from choking on contaminated air filters, suspicion softened to reluctant gratitude. One evening, Ryan found her outside, perched on a ridge overlooking the plains. The sky burned crimson as twin suns set, casting her form in hues of blood and fire. "You don't rest much," he said, stepping beside her. Her eyes stayed on the horizon. "Rest is for those who are safe. I am not, neither am I." A silence stretched, filled by the wind. Then she turned to him, her voice low. "You should know the truth. The assassins will not come for you directly. They will bleed this colony first, cut your fence, poison your beasts, sabotage your defenses. Then, when you are weakened, they will strike." Rian's mouth tightened. He had seen this pattern before, on human worlds raided by marauders. Death always began in whispers. "Then we fight back before they finish the bah," he said. Her expression shifted. A spark lit in her violet eyes. "You would fight against the Dominion itself?" He shrugged. "I've fought worse, and won." For the first time she smiled, small, fleeting, but real. That night, as they checked the perimeter together, Rian asked the question that had been gnawing at him. "Why did you tell me the truth? You could have stayed silent, waited for me to be killed." She stopped walking, her silver skin glinting in starlight. Because I am tired of silence. My family cast me out because I asked questions. If I stayed quiet now, I would become the very thing they accused me of. Cowardly, complicit. I won't studied her in the darkness. That's dangerous. For both of us. Yes, her voice was steady, but danger is better than dishonor. The words hung between them, heavy and sharp. He understood them more than he cared to admit. The first attack came 3 nights later. The outpost's alarm screamed as shadows moved across the plains. Figures in black armor, swift and silent, surged against the fences. Plasma fire seared the night. Settlers scrambled for cover, their weapons pitiful against advanced gear. Ryan was already moving, rifle in hand, barking orders. Hold the line! Keep the turrets active! Beside him, Avalra leapt into action. She wielded a sleek rifle of alien make, its stock worn with use but cared for. Shots lanced through the darkness, each one precise, unerring. Where settlers missed, she did not. One attacker vaulted the fence, blade flashing. Avalra met him head-on, twisting with inhuman grace, disarming him with a crack of bone before finishing him in silence. Rian stared for half a heartbeat, then returned fire with grim satisfaction. The attackers withdrew as suddenly as they had come, leaving only scorched earth and broken fences. Settlers cheered faintly, but Ryan's gut tightened. This had not been a real assault. It had been a probe, a test. He turned to Avalra. She stood with rifle in hand, breath steady, eyes dark with knowledge. "They'll be back," she said quietly. He nodded. "And when they come, we'll be ready." Later, as the settlers repaired damage and the night fell quiet, Ryan found himself on the porch of the command barracks. Avalra sat nearby, cleaning her rifle with meticulous precision. "You fight like you've done this all your life," he said. "I have. My people trained from the age of 10. We are told it is honor. But I know now it was preparation for obedience. Not survival, and yet here you are surviving." Her hands paused. She lifted her gaze to him. "Not alone." The words hit deeper than he expected. He looked away into the darkness where danger waited. For the first time in years, he realized the weight on his shoulders wasn't his alone. By dawn, the colony stirred, bruised but alive. Children chased one another across dusty streets, laughter brittle but defiant. Settlers whispered the alien woman's name with something close to respect. And as Ryan watched Avelra among them, tall, unyielding violet eyes scanning every shadow, he understood something his enemies never would. The Dominion had sent him an outcast, a weapon meant to bring his ruin. Instead, they had sent him a partner, and together they would not only survive, they would fight back. The night was quiet in the way deserts are quiet, an uneasy stillness, waiting to be shattered. The stars blazed above Kestris 3, unfiltered by city haze sharp enough to cut the eye. Ryan Torvak stood on the outpost watchtower, rifle slung across his back, gaze sweeping the horizon. He'd learned to distrust silence long ago. Silence meant predators crouched just out of sight. Behind him, the steel ladder groaned softly. He didn't turn. He knew the sound of her steps now. Avelra joined him, her violet eyes catching starlight. She carried her alien rifle across her shoulders with the casual confidence of a seasoned fighter. Her silver-toned skin shimmered faintly, a reminder that she did not belong to this world or any human one. "You don't sleep," she said quietly. "Neither do you." She tilted her head, considering him. "Sleep is surrender. The enemy waits for it." "Been my philosophy for 30 years, Rian muttered. The wind carried dust between them, lifting strands of her dark hair. For a moment, the two stood in silence, warriors bound by instinct more than words. Then Avalra said, "They will come again. Stronger. They tested our fences. Next time, they will test our resolve." Rian's jaw tightened. He'd been thinking the same thing. "How many?" "Enough to break this place." Her voice was flat, but her hands clenched at her sides. "The Assembly does not forgive defiance. They want you dead, and me forgotten." Ryan turned toward her, eyes hard. "Then we don't give them what they want." Her gaze locked with his, steady as stone. Something unspoken passed between them, an agreement deeper than strategy. Survival was no longer just about one of them. The attack came 3 days later. It began with the Corvons again. The beasts screamed in their pens, panic rolling through the colony like thunder. Ryan sprinted from the barracks, boots pounding dirt, rifle already rising. Shapes moved in the darkness. Dozens of them this time. Sleek black armor, masks reflecting faint starlight. Plasma bolts lit the night, slicing through the air with shrieks of energy. "Positions!" Rian roared, his voice cutting through chaos. Settlers scrambled, clutching rifles and shotguns too primitive for the war ahead. Children were pulled into shelters. Sirens wailed across the compound. And Avelra was already there, her rifle blazing lines of blue-white energy. Each shot struck with surgical precision, dropping attackers before they cleared the fence. She moved like water, flowing from cover to cover, her body a blur of honed reflex. Ryan fired beside her, the recoil pounding into his shoulder. He counted shots, reloaded with muscle memory, barked orders between bursts. His chest burned with adrenaline. The settlers held for minutes that felt like hours. Plasma tore through barricades. Smoke filled the air, acrid and suffocating. The ground shook as grenades ripped holes in the outer walls. Then the first breach came. 4 armored figures vaulted the wreck fence, blades gleaming. Ryan spun, dropped one with a headshot, then another with a burst to the chest. The third reached him, blade arcing. Before it could fall, Avelra was there. She caught the strike on her rifle, twisting, slamming an elbow into the enemy's helm with bone-cracking force. Her blade, a short curved weapon from her belt, flashed once. The armored figure collapsed, lifeless. Ryan finished the last with a brutal shot. For a heartbeat, the two stood back to back, breathing hard, surrounded by smoke and fire. "This isn't a raid," Ryan growled. "No," Avelra said grimly. "It's a purge." The colonists were brave, but bravery had limits. One by one, their defenses fell. A turret exploded in a storm of sparks. A storage unit went up in flames, lighting the sky like a beacon. Rian shouted for a fallback, herding settlers toward the underground shelters. "Move! Get them inside." He felt heat at his side. Avelra, her eyes blazing, rifle spitting fire at the advancing line. She was a storm in flesh, unyielding, her voice calm even as she killed with every shot. "Your south perimeter is gone," she said, ducking behind cover. "If we stay, we die." "Where do we go?" he demanded. She pointed toward the ridge behind the colony. "The tunnels. They lead to the dry caverns. We can strike from there," Rion did not hesitate. "You lead. I'll cover." They moved fast, pulling settlers with them, firing in bursts to slow pursuit. Plasma bolts rained down, cutting the air with shrieks. Dust stung their eyes. One settler fell, then another. Rian's gut twisted, but there was no time to mourn. At the tunnel entrance, Avelra keyed a hidden latch. The steel hatch groaned open. "Inside!" Quickly, settlers poured in, terrified but alive. Ryan covered the rear, firing until his rifle burned hot, then diving through the hatch as Avelra sealed it behind them. Darkness swallowed them. Only the faint glow of Avelra's rifle lit the way. The tunnels were narrow, cut from stone decades ago during the first colony wars. Dust coated the walls, and the air smelled of old iron. Ryan led from the front, scanning for movement. Behind him, settlers stumbled in silence, children clinging to their parents. And beside him, Avelra moved like a shadow, her violet eyes sharp even in the dark. Finally, when the settlers were far enough inside, Ryan stopped. He leaned against the wall, chest heaving. His body ached, his arm burned from a glancing plasma hit, but his eyes stayed on her. "You saved them," he said quietly. Her gaze flickered. "I did what had to be done." "No." His voice was firm. "You chose to. You could have left. You didn't." Avelra looked away, expression unreadable. For the first time, the steel in her voice wavered. "I am tired of losing people." Rian stared at her. He saw it now, the burden she carried, the cost of truth. She had been cast out, branded traitor, yet still she fought for lives not her own. Without thinking, he reached out. His hand brushed her arm, warm against cool silver skin. She didn't pull away. The air shifted between them. For a moment, the war outside fell away, leaving only 2 exiles who had found each other in fire. Her breath caught, soft, unsteady. His chest tightened in response. The distance between them seemed to shrink, drawn by something neither fully understood. But before the moment could break, footsteps echoed down the tunnel. A scout stumbled into view, breathless. "They're regrouping," he gasped. "Dozens more. They'll surround the colony by dawn." Ryan's hand dropped. He straightened, soldier once more. Avelra's eyes hardened, but the spark between them remained. Unspoken, but undeniable. She looked at Ryan. "Then dawn will be our reckoning." They prepared through the night. Ryan armed the settlers, distributing rifles and grenades from hidden caches. Avelra taught them alien tactics: how to move, how to strike, how to use terrain against advanced tech. She moved among them with quiet authority, her presence commanding even the most skeptical. Children carried water, mothers patched wounds, old men sharpened blades. Fear filled the tunnels, but so did resolve. In a corner, Ryan found himself watching Avelra. The way she guided settlers' hands, the way she steadied a frightened boy's grip on his weapon. It was more than training. It was leadership. She caught him staring. A faint smile touched her lips. "You disapprove?" "No," he said softly. "I'm wondering why the assembly would throw away someone like you." Her expression darkened. "Because I refuse to kneel." Ryan nodded slowly. Then they made the worst mistake of their lives. The attack resumed with dawn. Through cracks in the cavern walls, they saw it. The colony surrounded by black armored soldiers, banners of the Dominion fluttering in the wind. Plasma fire lit the sky in streaks of red and blue. Ryan rallied the settlers. His voice was gravel and fire. "They think we're weak. They think we'll break. But today we show them what it means to fight for home." Cheers erupted, ragged but fierce. And then Avelra's voice rose, strong and clear, cutting through fear. "They exiled me to be forgotten. They sent me here to die. But I will not die on my knees. I will not die in silence. I stand with you." The settlers roared, emboldened. Together, Ryan and Avelra led them into the light. Plasma fire greeted them, scorching earth, blasting stone. But the settlers surged forward, firing from cover, striking from unexpected angles. Avelra's alien rifle sang death, each shot carving a path. Ryan moved like a force of nature, rifle barking, blade flashing when enemies closed too near. And always beside him, Avelra. Her movements were deadly grace, her presence a constant shield. For hours the battle raged. Smoke filled the air, bodies littered the dust. The sun climbed high, burning red against blood-soaked ground. And then quiet. The enemy pulled back, regrouping. Ryan collapsed against a barricade, chest heaving. He glanced at Avelra, who stood with rifle still in hand, sweat streaking her silver skin, violet eyes burning with defiance. "We held," he rasped. "For now," she said grimly. "But this was not their full force. They're waiting. They want to end it in one blow." Ryan frowned. "And what?" Her voice was cold, heavy with truth. "The assembly doesn't just want you dead. They want the colony erased, every man, woman, and child. By nightfall, they will burn this world." The wind carried the stench of burned steel and blood across the plains. Smoke from the morning's battle still curled upward, painting the sky in bruised streaks of black and red. The colony was alive, but barely. Walls cracked, turrets destroyed, families huddled in the shelters, waiting for the next storm to fall. Ryan Torvak stood on the ridge, overlooking what was left of their defenses. His hands rested on the railing, knuckles white with strain. He had led troops before, he'd watched entire armies break. But this was different. These weren't soldiers bred for war. These were farmers, miners, mechanics. And if the Dominion brought its full weight, they wouldn't last an hour. Bootsteps approached from behind. He didn't need to turn to know it was her. Avelra moved like a shadow, silent, precise. She stepped beside him, her violet eyes scanning the horizon where dust clouds gathered. "They're not retreating," she said flatly. "They're positioning." Ryan nodded. "I've seen it before. Encirclement. They'll close in by nightfall." Her expression was unreadable, but her jaw clenched tight. "And leading them, it will be her." He turned, studying her face. "Her?" "My sister," Avelra said, the words heavy with bitterness. Serenia, the assembly's jewel, favored child, everything I was not. She looked toward the horizon again, eyes burning. They sent her because she will not hesitate. She will destroy this place, and me with it, Rian grunted. So the Dominion pits sister against sister. How noble of them. She will expect me to falter, Avalra said. She thinks blood binds me. But blood betrayed me long ago. Rian's gaze lingered on her. There was no hesitation in her words, only the steel of someone who had already buried the idea of family. He respected that. He knew the feeling. Then we give her a fight she won't forget, he said. They worked through the afternoon preparing the colony for the siege. Settlers carried ammunition, patched barricades, and strung tripwires across choke points. Old mining charges were wired into makeshift explosives. Avelra moved among them like a commander born. Her instructions were precise, her hands steady, her tone calm, even as she taught farmers to wield rifles and children to aim slingshots filled with shrapnel. They listened, because she spoke with the authority of survival, not politics. At one point, she stood beside a settler repairing a plasma turret. Her long fingers adjusted the alignment with subtle precision, and the machine hummed back to life. She turned, catching Ryan watching her. What? She asked, one brow raised. You're better at this than half the officers I've served with, Rian said. She gave a humorless smile. My people saw it as disobedience. You see it as strength. Strange how perspective shifts. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Perspective doesn't change what you are. They called you a burden. I see the one person keeping this place alive. For a moment, her expression softened. The air between them grew taut, charged. Her lips parted as if to speak, but she caught herself, looking away. Focus on the fight, she said quietly. Always, he replied. But his chest tightened with something far more dangerous than fear. Dusk fell, painting the sky in blood. The Dominion army appeared on the horizon, dozens of armored transports rolling across the plains, banners of the High Assembly glinting under fading light. At their center, a towering command skimmer hovered, sleek and predatory. And on its platform, visible even from afar, stood Serenia. Where Avelra was silver in shadow, Serenia was gold in fire. Her armor gleamed with ceremonial etchings, her posture regal, her hair a cascade of obsidian pulled into a warrior's crown. She raised her arm, and the Dominion ranks halted in perfect synchrony. Rian felt the settlers around him shudder. Even at this distance, Serenia radiated dominance. Beside him, Avalra's eyes narrowed, but her hands did not tremble. She plays the role well, she murmured. But it's all theater. Underneath, she bleeds like anyone, then we'll make her bleed, Rian said grimly. The first shells fell. Explosions ripped across the colony, fire raining from the sky. Settlers screamed, scattering into trenches and shelters. Turrets spat fire in return, their barrels glowing red as they carved into the advancing line. The siege had begun. The colony became chaos incarnate. Plasma bolts streaked through the air, turning night into day. Explosions rattled the ground. Smoke thickened, choking lungs and blinding eyes. Ryan barked orders, moving from barricade to barricade, rallying terrified settlers into makeshift squads. Hold the lines! Cover the flanks! His rifle spat fire, each shot precise, years of war carving efficiency into his movements. And always Avelra was there. She fought with a grace that seemed almost inhuman, weaving through fire, her rifle an extension of her body. Every shot found its mark. Every strike of her blade left an enemy broken. She was fury and discipline fused, and the settlers rallied around her as though she were their banner. At one point, she and Ryan found themselves back to back again, plasma fire scorching the barricade around them. He reloaded, gritting his teeth. Reminds me of Siege of Helvar Prime, he shouted over the din. I was there, Avalra replied, firing 3 shots in quick succession. On the other side. Ryan froze for a half second, eyes widening, then laughed bitterly. Figures. She shot another enemy clean through the helm. Fate has a cruel sense of humor. He glanced at her, and for one insane moment, amidst fire and death, he smiled. Hours bled away into carnage. By midnight, the colony was scarred beyond recognition. Buildings smoldered, fences lay in ruins. And still the Dominion pressed forward, but the settlers did not break. For every line that fell, another rose. For every soldier that breached, another was cut down. Atop the ridge, Serenia watched, her lips curled in disdain. She raised her hand, signaling her elite guard forward. Uvalra saw her, her heart clenched like a fist. For years, Serenia had been her mirror, the one who obeyed where she questioned, who thrived in the assembly's shadow while Avalra was cast aside. Now the mirror had become a weapon. Ryan followed her gaze. That's her. Yes, Avelra's voice was steady, and she will not stop until I'm ash. Then let's make sure she burns first, Rian said. The elite guard hit like a hammer. Armored giants in obsidian plating stormed the barricades, weapons cleaving through defenses with brutal efficiency. Settlers fell back, desperate and outmatched. Ryan charged into the fray, rifle blazing, blade flashing. His muscles screamed with fatigue, his lungs burned with smoke, but he moved like a man possessed. Every step he took was defiance. Every kill, a refusal to yield. And beside him, Avalra was a tempest. She flowed through the guard like lightning, her blade singing, her rifle striking with pinpoint accuracy. Blood stained her silver skin, but her eyes burned with unbreakable fire. At one point, an armored giant slammed her to the ground. Blade raised for the kill. Ryan turned, fury igniting, but before he could reach her, she rolled, driving her short blade through the enemy's throat. She rose, chest heaving, eyes meeting his. I told you, she panted. I do not die on my knees. Ryan's throat tightened. He wanted to say something, anything, but words were too small for the storm inside him. Instead, he reached out, pulling her back to her feet. Their hands lingered for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Then the moment shattered as another explosion ripped the barricade apart. By dawn, the colony still stood, but barely. The Dominion army regrouped at the horizon, their banners unbroken. And at their center, Serenia raised her blade, her voice amplified across the plains. People of Kestris, hand over the traitor Avelra, and I will grant you mercy. Refuge in your colony will burn until nothing remains. Silence fell. Settlers looked to Avelra with wide, fearful eyes. The choice was clear. Sacrifice one or doom them all. Avelra stepped forward, her violet eyes cold as steel. She raised her voice, carrying over the colony. She lies. The assembly does not grant mercy. If you give me up, they will kill you anyway. I am not your burden. I am your weapon. Stand with me, and we may yet survive. The settlers roared their answer, defiance ragged but fierce. They would not yield her. Rian moved to her side, his rifle ready. Looks like they've chosen. Avalra's chest tightened. She glanced at him, her voice low. Then it seems I am not alone after all. Their eyes locked. For the first time since her exile, Avelra felt the weight of her name lift, replaced by something new. Something dangerous, something fragile, something she had not dared hope for. And as the Dominion prepared its final assault, she realized this battle was no longer about survival alone. It was about belonging. It was about fighting for a future that was finally hers. Dawn broke red over Kestris 3, as though the sky itself bled for what was about to come. The Dominion's banners fluttered in the wind, their army stretching across the horizon in an unbroken wall of steel and fire. At its center hovered the command skimmer, sleek and black, and on its prow stood Serenia, Avalra's sister, her silhouette a spear pointed straight at the heart of the colony. Behind the battered barricades, the settlers waited. Their weapons were few, their ammunition running low, but their eyes burned with defiance. Children clutched stones as if they were grenades. Farmers held rifles like lifelines. And at the front of it all stood Ryan and Avelra, side by side, the twin anchors of a people who refused to kneel. Ryan scanned the enemy line, his rifle heavy in his hands. He had seen hopeless odds before, but never had he felt the same fire he felt now. Because this time he wasn't fighting for orders. He was fighting for her. Avalra's violet gaze was fixed on her sister. Her jaw was set, her blade gleaming in the dawn light. This ends today, she murmured. Rian glanced at her. With you, he said simply. I believe it. The Dominion advanced. Drums of war thundered through the plains, matched by the grinding of armored transports. Plasma cannons charged, their hum filling the air with deadly anticipation. The settlers braced, breaths shallow, hearts pounding. Ryan raised his rifle. His voice roared across the barricades. "This is our home! Make them bleed for every inch!" The settlers erupted in a cheer that bordered on madness. And then the sky split with fire. Plasma bolts rained down, shattering walls, searing earth. Explosions shook the ground as Dominion soldiers surged forward, black armor glinting. The colony answered with everything it had, rifles crackling, turrets spitting flame, grenades arcing in desperate throws. Ryan fought at the front, his rifle barking, his blade flashing when enemies closed. Every movement was instinct carved by decades of war. His muscles screamed, his lungs burned, but he held the line, refusing to yield an inch. And beside him, Avelra was a tempest incarnate. She moved with inhuman speed, her alien rifle singing precise death, her blade carving arcs of silver. She fought not as exile, not as burden, but as a warrior unchained. Settlers who once whispered against her now followed her lead, shouting her name as a rallying cry. "Avelra! Avelra!" She heard them, and for the first time she felt what it meant to belong. Hours bled away into fire and smoke. The ground was littered with bodies, Dominion soldiers and settlers alike. The colony burned, yet still it stood. Still they fought. At last the command skimmer drifted forward, casting its shadow over the battlefield. Serenia raised her hand, signaling the advance to pause. The Dominion line froze, disciplined and cold. Her amplified voice rolled across the plain. "Enough of this farce. Avelra, come forth. Face me or watch these humans die screaming." Silence fell, heavy as stone. Settlers looked to Avelra, fear and faith mingling in their eyes. Rian's jaw clenched. "This is a trap," he muttered. "Yes," Avelra said softly. She stepped forward, her blade at her side, her rifle slung across her back. "But it is my trap to walk into." Rian caught her arm. "Don't." She turned, her eyes locking onto his. For a moment the battle faded, the world narrowing to just them. "If I do not go, they will slaughter everyone. If I do, I may buy us a chance." His hand tightened on her arm. "Then I'm coming with you." She shook her head. "This is between sisters." Ryan's voice was steel. "Then let her face us both. Because I'm not letting you fight alone." Her breath caught. For the first time in years, she felt tears burn the back of her eyes. But she nodded. Together they walked forward. The battlefield parted as they approached. Serenia stood tall on her skimmer, her armor gleaming gold in the sun, her eyes sharp and merciless, fixed on Avelra. "So it's true," Serenia said, her voice carrying disdain. "You've chosen these creatures over your own blood." "I chose truth over lies," Avelra replied. Her voice was clear, unshaken. "I chose freedom over chains. And I chose them because they fight for one another, not for power." Serenia's lips curled in a sneer. "Then you will die their pet." She leapt from the skimmer, landing with the grace of a predator. Her blade hissed as it ignited, glowing with energy. Avelra drew her own blade. Its hum filled the air, a low song of defiance. And then the sisters clashed. The duel was chaos and poetry combined. Steel met energy, sparks lighting the air with every strike. Serenia's attacks were precise, honed by years of sanctioned training. Avelra's were raw, unorthodox, shaped by survival. The ground trembled beneath their fury. Ryan circled the edge, his rifle ready, fending off Dominion guards who surged forward to interfere. He dropped one with a headshot, another with a blade to the gut, but his eyes never left the sisters. Serenia pressed hard, driving Avelra back with relentless strikes. "You were always weak," she spat, "always questioning, never obeying. And now, look at you, crawling with humans." Avelra blocked a strike, sparks showering her face. Her voice was steady. "If weakness means refusing to kill the innocent, then I will be weak forever." Her blade slipped through Serenia's guard, slicing her armor. Blood blossomed, dark and hot. Serenia staggered, eyes blazing with fury. "You will regret that," she hissed. She lunged again, faster, deadlier. Avalra faltered, sweat blinding her eyes. Serenya's blade arced down, and Ryan was there, blocking the strike with his rifle, the weapon cracking under the force but holding. He shoved back, gunfire roaring, forcing Serenya to retreat. "You'll have to go through me too," he growled. For a moment, Serenya stared, rage twisting her face. "A human dares to stand between Valar blood?" "I don't stand between," Rian said coldly. "I stand beside." Avalra moved in, her blade flashing. Together, human and alien struck in unison, his rifle barking, her blade cutting, their movements flowing as though they'd trained together for years. Serenya faltered, overwhelmed by the rhythm she couldn't match. With a final cry, Avelra's blade pierced her sister's chest. Serenya gasped, eyes wide, blood spilling. She fell to her knees, disbelief etched across her face. "You should have been nothing," she whispered. Avelra's eyes burned with grief and resolve. "And yet I am more than you ever were." Serenya collapsed, her blade extinguishing. The Dominion line rippled with shock. Their commander was dead, their certainty fractured. Rian seized the moment. He raised his rifle high, his voice booming across the battlefield. "You thought us broken. You thought us weak. But this is what it means to be human. We endure. We fight. We rise." Avalra stood beside him, her blood-stained blade raised. "And I am proof that exile does not mean defeat. The Assembly's lies die here, with their champion." The settlers roared. Dominion soldiers faltered, retreating in disarray. Within minutes, their line broke. Smoke and silence claimed the field. The battle was over. Days later, the aftermath rippled across the galaxy. Dominion corruption, exposed through Serenya's fallen command logs, spread like wildfire. Allies withdrew. The High Assembly fractured. Arrest warrants were issued for elders once thought untouchable. The Dominion was no longer unbreakable. On Kestris, the colony rebuilt. Burned walls rose again. Fields were sown anew. The people walked taller, their eyes no longer clouded by fear. And in the heart of it all stood Ryan and Avelra. 3 weeks after the battle, under a sky washed clean by rain, the colony gathered. Ryan wore his commander's coat, freshly mended. Velra wore a garment of woven silver and blue, crafted by settlers as a gift. They stood together before a circuit preacher, human words mingling with alien vows. When the moment came, Rian took her hand, his voice low but firm. "I fought alone for too long. With you, I've found more than survival. I've found home." Her eyes glistened, her voice steady. "They called me exile, burden, traitor. But you saw me as more. With you, I have found my place." Their vows sealed, they kissed as the colony erupted in cheers. Years passed. Visitors to Kestris would find Rian training settlers at dawn, his voice carrying across the fields, his movements strong but measured. And nearby they would see Avalra among the gardens, her silver skin gleaming under twin suns, her blade never far from reach. Together, they had built not just survival but a future. Their love story was not written in fragile words or fleeting beauty. It was forged in battle, tempered by fire and bound by choice. The Dominion had exiled her as a cruel joke. They had expected her to die. Instead, she became proof of a truth they could never destroy. That sometimes the galaxy's greatest strength was not bloodline, nor power, nor empire. It was a human's will to endure, and an exile's choice to stand beside him. The end.